Hi there, I'm Mike. What I have for you today is a second attempt at doing this video because I recorded a very long, hour-long, in fact, version of it, and it didn't quite pan out like I wanted it to. So here I am with my actual version of Star Wars The Black Series Hyperreal Darth Vader. It doesn't get much more hyper, and it doesn't get much more real. So this is a brand new line from the Black Series. It's called Hyperreal. It's a new scale, new technology, new style. Everything's pretty much new about it. It is both hyper and it is continuously real. So the way the box works here is we have a very nice, highly detailed picture of Darth Vader on the box. On the side, we have a nice open window. On the back, we have images of him with some little tidbits about the figure, features of the figure, if you will, which we'll go into on here. On the side, we have a little bit more tidbit here, and then back to the front, what we actually have is a Velcro opening, and we get a lot of stuff going on in here. So what's cool about this, obviously the figure is not in here, he is in front of me, but the figure is packaged in the box so that if you are not an out-of-box collector, if you collect things mint in box, for whatever reason you choose to do so, it is your right, and they package it in a way that I feel like is very friendly to those collectors if you are one of those. He's packaged in a cool pose, he's holding his lightsaber, so it's more interesting than just him standing in a box. His extra accessories are over here on the side, and we'll get into all those, but I just want to point out the box. The box is very unique, it is very hyper, and it's still real. It's very real. Like, I'm holding it in my hand, it's so real. If you know anything about the Hyperreal line, let me catch you up. It's an 8-inch line, which is about 2 inches bigger than the 6-inch line that we currently have in the Star Wars Black Series. It is composed of an endoskeleton, a metal endoskeleton, over sort of weird, soft, rubbery, fleshy material. And then it has a mixture of hard plastic goods and then some soft goods over it to kind of give you this very interesting and unique experience. I also do want to point that on the bottom down here it says adult. This is clearly intended to be an adult collectible. It's not a kid's toy. I mean, for the price tag, you better believe it. I would not give a kid an $80 toy. As you play with it and as you see in my review, you'll kind of understand why this is really intended for people like you and me, assuming that you're like me. So that's enough about the box. There's not a whole, I mean, there's actually a lot going on here, but I've pretty much pointed out all the important things. I'm assuming the rest of them are going to be like this. But I want to talk about the figure proper. So let's put this away and let's pull out the Darth Vader. You can see that it is a very large figure. Like I said, it's an 8-inch scale. So right away you might be thinking, well, that's not going to fit into my collection, and you're right. What I want to talk about is going into sort of the review proper here, starting with likeness. Being a new figure, I want to talk about Darth Vader. Does what I have in my hand look like Darth Vader? Does it look good? And the answer is yes, absolutely. It does look good. It does look like Darth Vader. This is Darth Vader as he appeared in The Empire Strikes Back. He is a spot-on likeness of Darth Vader. I really don't know how they could get it anymore to look like Darth Vader. He's got Darth Vader's helmet. He's got Darth Vader's armor. He's wearing basically just Darth Vader's clothes. And if he's not Darth Vader, but he's wearing Darth Vader's clothes, I don't want to know who he is. So the new scale, the larger scale, the 8-inch scale here, gives them the ability to add a lot more detail. You can get a lot more fine with it. They have a lot more opportunity for paint apps and sculpt, where in the 6-inch line or in the 3 3/4-inch line, it's really a lot harder to do those smaller things. So it's definitely pretty cool that they took the time to get this right. I love Darth Vader, so it's nice to finally have just a decent Darth Vader that looks like this, because the Return of the Jedi one is trash. I like being able to have a Vader that looks like this with his Sith robes under his armor instead of over the top like he had in A New Hope in Rogue One. When you see pictures of an action figure, you can tell it's an action figure because you see the joints, you see where the arms move, you see where the legs move. When you see this, it just looks like a guy in a suit to me. Like, if you didn't tell me that that was a picture of a toy, I would be hard pressed to be like, that looks like a dude in, like, I'm assuming a suit or a picture from a still. Like, it just looks that good. So there's definitely a lot going on here that I love. For me, it's going to be a fantastic display piece that I have a lot of fun with. You know, in terms of looks, I'm definitely going to give it the full point. Looking at it, it's just an amazing, amazing likeness. I really can't get over how good this looks in hand. Pictures don't do it justice, and that includes mine. So moving on from likeness, let's talk about what he comes with, and maybe what he should have come with. So what does he come with? The box states that he comes with 8 accessories, a stand, and instructions. Let's take a look at those in reverse order, starting with the instructions. Now, I've said for a long time that Star Wars The Black Series figures should come with instructions. There's been a lot of times where I've missed features and I've had to do an update review, or I just didn't know what to do with something or what something was because there were no instructions to go with it. And I would just like that if I knew what you intended, Hasbro. Sometimes it's not that clear. So in this one, we do have instructions, which is nice. Flip it over to the back, we get not what I was expecting, not what I was hoping for. What it says here is basically, please pose with care, don't overextend the joints, which we'll talk about more in a bit. It also says use a soft cloth or brush. I'm assuming they mean when cleaning it, not when just handling it, but it doesn't necessarily say that. It just says use a soft cloth or brush in a bunch of different languages. It also says remove if desired, and that's on the stand. But the thing about that, Hasbro, is you have to put them on the stand first. So what kind of instruction even is this? What do you mean remove if desired? That's all it says. That doesn't mean anything. So the instructions, sure, it's good that you gave them to us. They don't really get me anywhere that I wasn't already there in the first place, just from looking at it and holding it in my hands and figuring out with my own brain. So thanks for nothing, I guess, in terms of instructions. But that's just a piece of paper. I'm not gonna let a piece of paper get me down. Let's talk about the other fun stuff that he comes with. First, we have the stand. This stand is not awful, but it's not good. It's molded to be after the Carbonite Freezing Chamber, which it definitely is Empire Strikes Back themed, which I love. It's definitely my favorite Star Wars movie. It's just kind of a dull, kind of gunmetal gray plastic. There are a bunch of holes in it, and then some actual peg holes, 4 peg holes to be exact. And then there's some holes on the side right here. Now what you could do is on the bottom, we have 3 little pegs and 1 little long piece. The long piece comes right off and it actually clips on to either side, either left side or right side. And what that's for is whenever the next figure comes out, the Luke Skywalker, you can actually pair these together using this little coupler. That's what this is. So what's cool about this, they gave you a place to store it if you don't have another figure without having to worry about losing it. It just kind of clips right on the bottom and it stays right there unless you pull it off. Next, we have these 3 little peg holes. They come right out of the bottom and they go in any one of these 4 places you have. Now, what's weird to me is that there are 3 of them, but Darth Vader only has 2 feet. So I don't know what you're supposed to do with the 3rd one other than just having an extra one in case you lose one. As an adult, I hope to never lose one, but one never knows, I suppose. They do stick in the bottom very securely, and then they go into any of the holes very neatly. So when you put them in there, they look natural. They look like they're molded in, which is nice, but they are removable. But that's also a problem. Darth Vader, just like any other toy, has peg holes on the bottom of his feet. You just kind of line them up, push it in, and there he goes. And they actually stay on okay. He definitely wobbles a little bit, and then he can fall, so it's not the best stand in the world, but there are worse stands, I suppose. The problem is, oftentimes, is that when I took Darth Vader off of the stand, the peg hole wanted to go with it, and it stuck in the bottom of his foot. And I had a hard time getting that back out. I had to actually pry it out with my teeth to get it off the bottom of his shoe. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you are going to use the stand and you're going to use the pegs, the peg holes might prefer the bottom of his feet rather than the bottom of the stand here. It's neat that they gave one. I like that. And for $80, you better believe they should give one, but it could be better. Next, we have his lightsaber. Now he comes packaged with his lightsaber in hand, and it looks great in the package. The problem with the way he was positioned in my package did make my lightsaber blade just a little bit bent, and I haven't taken the time to heat it up and unbend it yet. The lightsaber is pretty nice. The blade itself is a rich red, very thick, very sturdy. It comes out easily, so you don't have to worry about prying it apart. Some of the newer Black Series figures, I'm afraid of actually pulling them apart and breaking them. There's a nice thick peg joint down here, so I'm not afraid of it breaking if it falls, which is nice. I will say though that if you do take it off and put it back, make sure, because the blade down here where it meets the lightsaber is kind of cut, grooved up a little bit, And when I was playing with it in my first cut of this video, I put it on slightly wrong, which made the lightsaber look like it was bent severely at almost a 45-degree angle. And I thought that I had broken it last night. I'm like, what did I do? And it wasn't until after I turned the cameras off and played with it a bit that I realized that I just needed to twist it a little bit to get it straight. And then I felt real dumb. It was a cool experience for me. Let's talk about the hilt. The hilt is sculpted very, very nicely. The rubber they use, while lightly pliable, is much sturdier than the rubber they use for the 6-inch figures. The 6-inch figures are very, very pliable and almost rubbery. These are a little bit more plasticky, which I like. There's a lot of sculpted detail on here. Because it's bigger, they can do that, which is really, really nice with this scale. The paint job is pretty good. I do have a couple paint blemishes here and there, 1 or 2, not many, but they are there. Although if it's hanging on his belt or in his hand, it's really hard to notice. It looks to me like the lightsaber is silver with black parts painted on. It does have a little kind of hoop for which you can attach it to his belt molded on. And there is a spot on the side where his belt has a little hook, and it does go right on there. I love the way this looks either in hand or on his belt. Speaking of in hand, let's talk about his other accessory, which is like 7 extra hands. It's like 1,000,000 hands. He's got so many hands. He's got touching hands. He's got reaching out hands. He's got touching me hands. He's got touching you hands. So let's talk about all his hands. Actually, in reality, he has 9 hands, counting the 2 that he has, because he is a person with 2 hands. So let's talk about the different options that he comes with. First of all, he's got fisty hands. If you want to get him in a fun fisticuffs position, you can by putting both those on. Other than that, you can use a closed hand for a lot of different options. I love this. You can put it over his breast like a salute. You can have it holding up like a curse you kind of thing. There's a lot of different scenarios where a fisted hand looks fantastic, especially on Darth Vader. Next, he has pointing hands. He's got the finger guns if you want to do that. Again, he's got one for his left hand and his right hand. And you can do both if you want to give him that haha cool guy look, the Buddy Vader kind of thing. Or you can just have one in there and recreate that Empire Wants You pose if you want to do that. Next, he has a left and right grabby hand. He comes with the left grabby hand on in the box because it has his lightsaber in his hand. But he also has one for his right hand. You can have his lightsaber held in either hand if you want to, or in both hands. You can do whatever you want, and that's kind of the beauty of hands like this. Next, he has like a force choke hand, which is exclusively on his right hand, which is really, really nice because Darth Vader spends a lot of time choking people, like a weirdly lot amount of time. Next, on his left hand, he has an open palmed hand for kind of force moving, or it's a force power hand, so it's just kind of sprawled open, but you can also just have it there if you just want them looking a little bit more natural. A lot of people stand with their hands just open. People don't stand with their hands clasped or balled up a lot. They stand with them open. So you can just give them a more natural, relaxed look with that hand if you want to. Lastly, he has another open palmed hand for his right hand, but this one has a fun little hole in it. And that hole goes with the next accessory. This is his, I don't honestly know what this is. I don't know if it's like a force power kind of thing, or if it's supposed to be like a deflecting blaster bolt kind of thing. It's big, it's not symmetrically shaped, and I mean, it could be whatever you want. One of the mistakes I made in the first video I recorded was that I was just putting it on and it never quite fit right. And then I realized after I turned the cameras off that if you look at the back of the effect, he actually has a handprint and it matches the hand perfectly. So if you put that on the hand and line up the handprint, it actually stays very well and matches very, very nicely. So that's awesome. And what's cool about this is exactly what I've always wanted the Black Series to have. Multiple hands. Every Black Series figure could do with multiple hands, just like what I'm talking about here. Sure, you can only have 2 on at a time because he only has 2 arms. He only needs 2 hands. But you have a lot of really cool options for posing him. If you want the closed fist, if you want the open fist, if you want the pointy hands, if you want the force choke, you just have a lot of options, and that's what I want. Especially when I'm spending this much on a figure, I want those display options. The only downside to all these different hands is that it's kind of tough to get them on and off. Now, I've done it a lot. I've swapped out each of his hands at least 4 times a piece, just trying out different combinations. Getting it on each time is tough. Underneath his gloves, when you pull off the whole hand, there's a metal kind of peg that it goes into, and you can feel it snap when you push it in, but sometimes you gotta push it in real hard. What I'm afraid of is the inner endoskeleton eventually pushing its way through the skin, and I don't want that. It's an $80 toy, I don't want to break it, but it's really hard to be gentle while getting these fists on and off, because if you don't get them on right, they will just fall off. That's just a concern I have, and I wanted to voice it here. So that's it for his accessories. The only thing I kind of wish that he came with was maybe for his lightsaber, like a blaster bolt deflection kind of thing. So if you wanted to put his lightsaber in his hand, you can make it look like he was deflecting a blaster bolt. In fact, I would prefer that over whatever this is. I can't tell, again, if this is like where he deflected Han Solo's blaster in his hand, or if it's just supposed to be like a force kind of thing pushing out. Maybe it's just up to interpretation, but I'm not a real big fan of it, especially when you take pictures of it. It kind of takes up the whole thing. It's hard to see that it's coming off of his arm. It just looks like a floating kind of piece of translucent plastic in front of him. I'm not a huge fan of that, and I wish that there had been some kind of blaster deflection bolt to kind of apply to his lightsaber blade. But other than that, I honestly can't think of anything that he should have come with but didn't. I'm very happy with the different hands he came with. I'm very happy that he came with a stand, although I wish the stand was a little better. So I'm going to give it a 0.75. He came with a lot. I feel bad even deducting a little bit because of how many things he came with, but at the same time, this is an $80 figure. He should come with this much stuff. So I'm not going to give him extra bonus points because he came with stuff he should. But I'm going to critique the stuff that he did come with. So next, let's talk articulation. Let's go ahead and take a look at that here. Darth Vader's head moves all the way around, has a little bit of a waggle. It moves forward a little bit, back a little bit. His arm does move out. It moves forward about this far, back about this far. Very deep bend. He has a ratcheted swivel at the elbow. He also has a swivel at the glove. He has a torso crunch that moves forward this far, back this far, and it even has a twist. His thigh can move forward this far, back this far. He has a deep knee bend, some sort of twist down here, a hinge at the ankle, as well as a bit of a rock. With this being Vader's widest stance with both his feet flat on the ground. He looks amazing. So in summary, I just love the fact that there are no visible seams, but at the same time, especially getting him out of the package, I was scared to bend anything. One of the nice things about having articulation and joints is you can tell where he's supposed to bend. If you're not quite sure, it can be very scary. You don't want to break an $80 toy. When you kind of figure it out and play with it a little bit, very gently at first, it becomes second nature. Now I'm bending things all over the place and not super worrying about it, but at first, I was definitely babying it. I do like the effect. I love what it looks like because you do get some really good poses out of here. There's no double joints on this figure. They're just single joints. But because there's no molded plastic to get in the way, you have a deep bend at the elbow. You have a deep bend at the knee. And it's really, really nice. But it's also kind of a drawback. Because he has that sort of fleshy material, when you get him in a pose, there's nothing really keeping him there. The material sort of wants to straighten back out a little bit. So there are some poses that I try to get him in, especially that kneeling pose from the box. I just can't get him to stay there. I can't get his head bowed forward enough. I can't get his arm to lay naturally on his knee. I can't even get his knees to sit naturally like they do on the box. Maybe I'm just not good at it. Maybe someone else out there can do it better than I, which wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm not an expert at this by any means, but I've had a hard time getting him in some poses. But that being said, you can get him into some great poses. I love how seamless everything looks. When you get him in a cool pose, he looks like a statue. And it just looks like someone sculpted him to look like that. But it's not. You can move him in any other position you pretty much want. And that is, I think, the beauty of the Hyperreal line. It's so real and hyper. I do want to reiterate though, as the instructions state, do not overbend him. Just like you can tear skin or muscles if you move a joint that's not supposed to be moved the way it's supposed to, or if you move it too far. But unlike you, Vader doesn't heal. So if you do end up tearing something, it's only going to lead to heartbreak. Another sort of drawback to this, and this is the last drawback, is due to the way the hands work, with the way they clip on and pull off, you do have a swivel at the wrist, which is not my favorite swivel because it's done at the base of the glove rather than at the wrist. It also is hard to turn them because of the skin type material kind of bends with the wrist rather than just letting the wrist move freely. But because of that, you also don't get any wrist hinges, which is kind of a bummer. Sometimes it's nice to have a wrist that can do this and he can't do that. That's the one major point of articulation he just really doesn't have, is the ability to move his wrist simply like this. He's got a lot of other stuff that's great. The knee, the legs, the arms, even down here at the boots. So while the articulation is good, and you can get him some really, really good poses, he looks intimidating just standing there. There are some little nitpicks there that do take away a little bit from the articulation, so I'm going to give it a 0.75 because I do feel like it does take away from the enjoyment. I really wanted to get him into the poses from the boxes. No matter how many times I tried, I could not get him to stay there. So let's move on to paint, sculpt, and detail. First of all, let's talk about his soft goods. His soft goods are as good a place to start as any. He has two. He has his cape, which is very high quality. It's very weighty. It hangs properly. I love how it looks. It looks just so good. He also has that inner Darth Vader kind of Sith robe that goes under his armor and under his belt and kind of extends down. It might actually extend down a little too far. Sometimes when I put him down on the desk, the cape kind of gets stuck underneath his feet, but it does look good. It hangs properly. I love how it looks. I'm glad he has it. Next, we have some points of sculpted armor. Let's start with the upper chest area. I love this upper chest area. It looks really, really good. It's sculpted and painted really, really well with the blacks and the grays. It's glossy where it needs to be. It's dull where it needs to be. The only downside here, and there's two, is that sometimes while posing it, the whole thing can become a little cockeyed, and you have to kind of adjust it. There's a couple times when taking pictures that I've noticed that in the process of moving it, it's kind of become a little bit lopsided, and I've had to pick them back up and fix it, and then figure out how to get them down without making it lopsided. So that can be annoying if you notice it. Next, his shoulder pieces are segmented to be able to move with the arms as you move them up and down, but they can look a little silly when you have them out. It gives them like kind of weird 80s shoulder pads kind of look, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I don't know how else they could have done it because it's part of his outfit. He needs them. Next, he has his control panel on his chest. I've always wanted to know what those do. I'm sure someone out there can tell me exactly what every button, switch, and knob does, but you don't have to know what they do to know that they're there. They're well sculpted and they're well painted. And I love how it looks because that is a necessity to Darth Vader's outfit. I'm pretty sure it controls his life support. Below that, we have his belt, all the little buttons and speaker on the front and little twists and knobs and whatever are sculpted and painted to precision. And as I mentioned before, on the left-hand side here, he does have a hook for his lightsaber. So I'm glad he has a place to put his lightsaber when he's not using it. Below the belt, we have his diaper codpiece thing. I'm only pointing it out because it's there. It does kind of look a little weird in some poses, like it sticks out a little far. I've never been a big fan of it, but I get why he has it, I guess. The gloves are sculpted in a hard plastic, and they're as glossy as they need to be. They look really, really good. And then lastly, his shin guards down here at his feet are also sculpted really well. They are glued onto the front of his legs, and they are glossy, and they look very, very good. Now that just leaves the rest of the figure here. And what it is sort of a very, at first I thought it was sticky, but it's not really sticky, but it is soft. It feels weird. It's weird when you can feel the skeleton inside, like it feels like he's a person. It feels like when I squeeze his leg, like I'm squeezing a leg. When I squeeze his arm, it feels like I'm squeezing an arm. It's definitely a little off-putting at first. I'm kind of used to it now, but it definitely, when I picked it up, I was like, ooh. What is this? That being said though, it's nice. I was a little worried at first that it was going to be fragile. So far it hasn't been. I've not really been rough with it, but I haven't exactly been delicate with it. I've kind of just played with it as I would play with anything, moving things as I would move anything. It hasn't broken yet, which is nice. There's a lot of great sculpted detail, lines going vertically up and down the entire length of his body. He even has at the folds of his arms and where his armpit meets his shoulders and at his knees, he has those creases and bends in there to make it look like it's fabric. It looks amazing. I really can't get over how good this looks. And the fact that they could do all that without any articulation points and seam lines, it really is a modern marvel of what they've done with this figure. I love the idea behind this. This is some good stuff right here. So because of all that, I'm going to give them the full point. They really went all out on this figure. I just don't know how he could look any more perfect, so I'm not going to really dock it anything. I'm going to give it the full point. So lastly, let's talk want and availability. Did I want this? Darth Vader is a fantastic character to do first. I don't know what other character they could have done first other than maybe Boba Fett, where anyone would want to buy him because Darth Vader is an iconic character. This is the kind of piece that you don't have to buy into the whole line to really appreciate. Like, I could go the rest of my life and have this be my only Hyperreal figure and be 100% fine with it because Darth Vader always looks cool on your shelf. So you know what? Yeah, I wanted it. Let's talk about value. I added this on here because this is a pricey boy. This is $79 retail. For $79, you get a premium figure with a really cool new kind of technology. You get a lot of accessories. And if you're the kind of person who likes to keep in the box, you get a really cool box. Is it worth $79 though? You know, there are other figures out there that are $79. SH Figure Arts get up that high. The Bandai Movie Realization kind of samurai line gets up that expensive. Heck, Mezco figures and Medicom figures get that expensive. So this is not out of the realm, and those are mostly 6-inch figures, maybe 7-inch. For the movie realization figures, this is 8 inches. This is a big boy. Yeah, the price point's high, which is gonna price a lot of people out of it, but I definitely feel, especially for this figure, that yeah, I mean, he's kind of worth it for what you get, but that might not be for everyone, if that kind of makes sense. Next, we have availability. Where can you pick this guy up at? I got mine off Amazon, and I got it actually at kind of a steal. When Amazon first put this guy up after he was announced at Toy Fair back in February, they had him up for $49 instead of $79, and I jumped on that quick. Honestly, for the last couple months, I keep expecting to get an email canceling my order because that's $30 off. That's almost half the price of the figure. I was praying that they wouldn't alter my deal, but obviously they didn't. I've got him here, and I only paid the $49. So for me, on Amazon, it was worth it. You can also get him at, Hasbro Pulse, of course, Dorkside Toys, Entertainment Earth, pretty much any online retailer that I've seen will carry him. I don't know if we're going to see him at Target or Walmart, and I don't know if GameStop's going to be open long enough to carry him. But the question becomes, is it worth the $79? I definitely think it's worth the $49 I paid, and if all the rest were $49, I would buy them in an instant. But if I paid $79 for this, it's hard to gauge because that's $30 more. I honestly don't know if I would be as happy with this guy at $79 as I am for $49. It's a tough call. I definitely think if you're the right person, that might be a price that you could pay for it, but I definitely don't think it's for everybody at that price point. I'm giving it a half a point for want and availability and value. I keep kind of coming around on this, where each time I talk about it or think about it, I get a little bit more okay with it in my head, but last night I was dead set against this not being worth the price. That was the first video I made, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to give this another shot, because after playing with it a little bit, it grew on me. So the value is becoming more and more apparent as I'm playing with it, as I'm handling it. So let's math all this out for the final score. What score am I giving this? I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think that this is an impressive figure. It looks great on the shelf. It's imposing. It's fun to play with. It's fun to just kind of mess around with. It's fun to put the different hands on for different looks. You can make it serious. You can make it silly. There's just a lot of fun things you can do with this. It's cool that it comes with so many accessories. It's cool that there are no seams and joints visible on this. I definitely love that. It's a little bit more fragile than I'm comfortable with. I haven't broken it yet, and I've kind of talked about that, but they even warned you in the instructions not to overextend, so it does give me a little bit of a apprehension when I'm playing with this. As it stands right now, I'm probably not going to get the Luke Skywalker version that comes out in the next couple months, but if they did another character like Boba Fett, I would probably buy that because I do like this a lot. What I do want though is for them to take this technology and apply that to Jabba the Hutt. I want a 6-inch Jabba the Hutt, but with whatever this is, because this is a fantastic thing that they have done with this line. I definitely like the whole endoskeleton thing. I like the real feel kind of skin. I want to see it implemented in different ways in the 6-inch line rather than being a whole new thing. So am I glad that I own it? Yes. Do I think it's worth the money that I paid? Yes. Do I think it's worth retail? It's like on the cusp. It really is. So I'm going to leave that to you. What do you think? Let me know down in the downstairs area. Are you going to get it? Do you have it on order? Is yours on the way? I love to read and respond to those. And I've alluded to another video that I recorded, a sort of first impressions review that I made last night. It's an hour long, and I just ended up not liking it. In the past, I would have deleted that video and no one would have ever seen it. But now, instead, what I'm going to do is post that on my Patreon page. If you want to see me mess with a toy for an hour, uncut, unedited, unadulterated, definitely no adults around, you can pay the minimum $1 to my Patreon if you want to, and go check that out. But again, that's not extra content that Patreon's getting in the sense that I'm only giving that to them. Normally, that video would have never seen the light of day. I would have deleted it. But I'm going to do something with it now to give some people who want to see it the chance to see it, I guess. If you want to check out my Patreon, that's going to be a link down below, maybe a card up here. I've got no idea where it's going to go. There's also a couple other ways you can support my channel down in the downstairs area if you want to. And if you could, go ahead and like, share, subscribe, comment down below, all of that stuff. It really does help out a lot. Just minor things like that help the channel out and myself out a lot. But most of all, thank you so much for getting this far. Thanks again for over 10,000 subscribers. That really does mean a lot to me. So with that, thanks for getting this far, and it's been Hyperreal. Bye.